It was a warm summer evening in the quiet town of Elmridge. The kind of evening when the sky turns purple, cicadas sing, and kids ride their bikes home before the streetlights flicker on. The peaceful mood was interrupted by the distant sound of sirens. Then came the alerts. Phones buzzed. Missing child, Max Holloway, 9 years old. Last seen in Elkwood Park at 6:15 p.m. Max was a cheerful kid, small for his age, with messy brown hair and a gap-toothed grin that could melt anyone's heart. He was last seen riding his blue BMX bike near the edge of Elkwood Park, a place most parents warned their children to stay away from after dark. Rumors said strange things happened there. By 9 p.m., local police had taped off the park. Volunteers showed up with flashlights, drones buzzed overhead, and the news vans began to line the street. Max's parents were standing near the playground, pale and speechless. His mother, Claire, clutched his favorite backpack like it was a lifeline. His father stood frozen, watching the tree lean with a 1,000-yard stare. But it wasn't until midnight that things took a darker turn. A man named Travis, one of the first volunteers to arrive, had wandered a little too far from the search group. He'd gone deep into the woods, following what looked like tire tracks. He stopped when he saw something lying in the dirt, Max's shoe. Then, the flashlight flickered. And that's when Travis said he saw someone. A figure. Not a child, not an adult. Something wrong. Watching him from between the trees. He ran. No one believed him at first, until they found the shoe the next morning, exactly where he said it was. And near it, something else. A carving on a tree. 3 letters, red. The media exploded. The town panicked. And people started whispering again, about the red ones. About the disappearances in the 1980s. About the thing in the woods that never left. But the police said nothing. No statements. Just more silence, more search dogs, and more fear. Max Holloway was never found. The town of Elmridge changed overnight. Parents kept their children home. Windows were locked, curtains drawn. The laughter of kids playing outside disappeared, replaced by whispered conversations and sleepless nights. The name Max Holloway was now spoken like a ghost's, carefully, and only when necessary. But for 3 teenagers, Logan, Bree, and Marcus, Max's disappearance was more than just a local tragedy. It was personal. Max was Bree's cousin. She'd babysat him just days before he vanished. Logan lived next door to the Holloways and had known Max since he was born. And Marcus, well, Marcus had secrets of his own. His older brother had disappeared in the exact same park, 14 years ago. No one had ever found a trace of him either. Fueled by grief and curiosity, the trio started digging. Not just through news articles, but through old police reports, forums, even conspiracy blogs. That's when they found something disturbing, a pattern. Every 13 years, a child had vanished in or near Elkwood Park. Always in summer. Always after sunset. And each time, the police closed the case quietly. No follow-ups. No real investigation. Like someone didn't want the truth to come out. Then they found something else. A photo. It was buried in an old article from 1985, about a missing girl named Lily Carver. The photo showed her standing near the woods. Behind her, in the trees, barely visible, was a shape. A tall, thin figure with glowing red eyes. It wasn't just an urban legend. Bree brought the photo to her uncle, a retired police officer who had worked on the Lily Carver case. At first, he refused to speak. But later that night, he left an envelope on Bree's doorstep. Inside were yellowed pages, handwritten notes, and one line underlined 3 times. If you see the red eyes, run. Don't look back. Ever. That night, Bree woke up gasping, heart pounding. She could have sworn she saw a face in her window. Red eyes. Watching. And then, gone. Logan didn't believe in monsters, not really. But something about that photo, the stories, and Bree's pale face the next morning made him question everything. They agreed to meet at Elkwood Park before sunset. Just the 3 of them. No parents. No one else needed to know. Marcus brought an old handheld camcorder from his dad's attic. If this thing shows up, he said, we're getting proof. Bree arrived last. She was quiet, her hoodie pulled low over her face. He was watching me last night, she whispered. I felt it. I know it. They entered the woods together. At first, everything was calm. The birds were still chirping, and golden light filtered through the leaves. But the deeper they went, the quieter it got. No birds. No wind. Just the sound of their own footsteps on dried leaves. Marcus pointed to a tree. Deep scratches marked the bark, high up, too high for any animal. "That's not natural," he muttered. They followed the path until they reached a small clearing. At the center stood an old well, covered in ivy. Bree froze. "This is it," she said. "Max told me about this place. Said it gave him the creeps." Suddenly, the camcorder started glitching. Marcus tapped the screen, confused. "It's not dead, but the screen's." A noise cut him off. Crack. Something was moving through the trees. Heavy. Slow. They turned toward the sound. Between two trunks, maybe 20 feet away, they saw it. Tall. Too tall. Its body was wrapped in shadow, like smoke that refused to clear. But its eyes glowed bright red, like coals pulled from a fire. They didn't scream. Couldn't. Their bodies froze. The figure took one step forward. And another. That's when Bree remembered the line from her uncle's note, "If you see the red eyes, run." "Gio," she yelled, grabbing Logan's arm. They sprinted through the woods, crashing through underbrush. Branches tore at their skin. The thing didn't chase them, not fast. But they could hear it behind them, walking steadily. Deliberately. When they burst out of the forest and back into the open park, it was gone. But the fear wasn't. It had followed them home. That night, Logan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the thing again, towering, still, with those burning red eyes. His phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. No text. Just an image. The same photo they'd taken in the woods, the one Marcus had recorded. But this time, something was different. The figure in the background was closer, much closer. Almost like it had moved. He sat up in bed, heart pounding. The message disappeared before he could screenshot it. Logan wasn't the only one. The next morning, Bree and Marcus both looked like they hadn't slept either. Bree had a fresh scratch down her arm. "It was on my window," she said. "Scraping the glass." I didn't look. Marcus had thrown his camcorder in the dumpster. It was on the tape. The thing. Watching me while I watched it. They agreed to meet at Bree's house, her uncle's old place, and try to find anything he left behind. If anyone knew about this thing, it was Max. Bree led them to the attic. Dust floated in the warm air. There were boxes, old books, and a small wooden chest covered in symbols neither of them recognized. Inside, *, a leather-bound journal. * several hand-drawn maps of the forest. * and a Polaroid. One that hadn't faded. It showed Max, younger and wild-eyed, standing in front of the well in the woods. Behind him, barely visible, those same glowing red eyes. The journal was full of notes. The creature had a name, the Hollow One. Max believed it was ancient, something older than the town, older than the trees. It didn't hunt for food. It hunted for attention. For fear. "Don't feed it with your eyes," Max had written. "Looking at it gives it power. Seeing it too long lets it in." Bree flipped to the last page. A drawing of the creature's face, surrounded by dozens of tiny eyes, like it had collected the ones that dared to stare. They all looked at each other. It was too late. They'd seen it. They'd all seen it. And now it saw them too. For the next few days, Logan barely spoke. His eyes stayed low, his voice flat. Something was wrong. Bree and Marcus noticed it first. He wouldn't go near mirrors. Wouldn't look outside after dark. And then there was the drawing. It started with a single eye, scribbled onto the inside of his notebook. Then another. And another. By the end of the week, every page was filled with frantic eyes. Watching. Waiting. "It's like they're following me," Logan muttered one night. "Even when I close the book, they don't go away." He wasn't sleeping anymore. Neither was Marcus. Bree tried to hold them together, but the strain was showing. They agreed to revisit the well, the place where it all started. Maybe they missed something. Maybe it could be reversed. The forest was different now. Not just darker, wrong. No birds. No wind. Just silence and the crunch of leaves under their boots. When they reached the clearing, the well was open. Wider than before. It felt like the forest was breathing around it. Bree held out Max's journal. He thought it came from here. That it needs people to fear it. Like, that's its food. Marcus stepped closer, peering into the black. Maybe if we understand where it comes from, we can stop it. Then came the sound. Not a roar. Not a growl. Whispers. Dozens of them. Calling names. Their names. They backed away, but Logan stayed frozen. His eyes were wide, staring straight down into the dark. And from that dark, something stared back. A red gleam. A single point of light, pulsing. Then two. Then dozens. Logan didn't scream. He didn't run. He just whispered, "I see it now." That night, Bree found him standing alone in his room. No lights on. Just scribbling more eyes onto his walls, his arms, even his face. It was taking him. Not with claws or teeth. But through sight. Through fear. Through belief. The morning after the terrifying night passed with eerie silence. Logan had barely slept, shadows twisted on his ceiling, whispering things he couldn't understand. He didn't tell anyone, but he remembered everything. The voice. The presence. The overwhelming sense that something ancient had crawled inside his mind and made itself at home. In the daylight, the house felt different, but not safer. Eli and Maya were already up, whispering in the kitchen. When Logan entered, they both turned abruptly. "You good?" Maya asked, scanning his face. Logan forced a crooked smile. "Just tired." Eli nodded. "We should keep searching. There's still the attic." The attic. It was the only place they hadn't dared to explore yet. And for good reason. Every time they walked by the narrow staircase leading up, a sudden wave of cold air rushed past them, like the house itself was warning them away. But now they had no choice. The stairs creaked beneath their weight as they climbed, each step echoing through the silence. Logan went last, his hand brushing the old, dusty wallpaper. It felt warm. Too warm. At the top, they pushed open the low wooden door. The attic was cluttered with old trunks, covered furniture, and boxes sealed shut with brittle tape. Dust hung in the air like mist, and it smelled of mildew and something older, something rotten beneath the surface. Maya knelt near an old trunk and opened it slowly. Inside, beneath folded sheets and moth-eaten coats, was a leather-bound book, cracked, brittle, soaked in age. A journal. She opened it carefully, flipping past yellowed pages filled with scribbled handwriting and sketches. Symbols. Faces. A strange drawing of the house with black roots growing from the basement. This belonged to someone named, she paused, Nathaniel Hart. Eli stiffened. That's the guy who used to own this house. The recluse who went missing decades ago. The entries grew darker as they read. Nathaniel wrote about the Watcher, a presence in the basement, awakened during a ritual he had tried to stop. He mentioned voices, hallucinations, blackouts, the same things Logan was experiencing. Then they found it. It feeds on emotion. Regret. Pain. Fear. It watches through mirrors. It listens when the house is quiet. It will take them one by one unless the chain is broken. But the chain is blood. Silence filled the attic. The three of them sat there, cold and scared, understanding for the first time, this wasn't just some cursed house. It was a trap. A predator. And they had walked straight into its mouth. Logan felt the words from the journal burn into his memory, and something deep inside him responded. He smiled. But it wasn't his smile. The air in the attic felt heavier now. Thick, like they were breathing underwater. The journal lay in Maya's lap, its pages stained with her trembling fingers. Logan's mind raced. He couldn't focus on the words. The laughter from last night echoed in his ears, not a memory, but a sound that was just on the edge of his hearing. He clenched his fists, trying to shut it out, but the whispers began again, low, mocking, like they were coming from all directions. Eli stood up, pacing. This is insane. This can't be real, right? People don't just vanish. There has to be a way out of this. Maya closed the journal, her eyes wide with horror. The chain, blood. It's not just a story. It's real. And we're trapped here because of it. Logan's gaze drifted to the far corner of the attic, where shadows seemed to move on their own. He blinked, and for a moment, the figure of a tall man in tattered clothes appeared there, watching them. Logan rubbed his eyes. No, it was gone. Just a trick of the light. But something in the back of his mind whispered it wasn't. His skin crawled. We need to leave, Eli said, his voice shaky. Let's just grab the essentials and go. This house, whatever this thing is, can't follow us if we leave, right? Logan turned sharply, staring at him. It's not going to let us go. You read the journal. It doesn't let you go. They all fell silent, the weight of Logan's words sinking in. A chill crept up their spines as they realized, leaving wasn't an option. Not anymore. Then, the house groaned. Not a normal creak. This was something more. It was like the structure itself was alive, stretching, breathing, shifting. The walls seemed to bend, twisting in unnatural angles. A loud bang echoed from below, followed by the sound of something heavy scraping across the floor. The basement. Without speaking, they all rushed toward the stairs. As they reached the bottom, a cold draft wrapped around them, and the light from the hallway flickered and died. They hesitated. Do we go down there? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Logan glanced at Eli. They all knew the answer. Yes, Logan said. We have no choice. The basement door was slightly ajar, as though it had been waiting for them. As they stepped inside, the air grew colder, and a smell like rotting meat stung their noses. The darkness was suffocating, but they moved deeper, their footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. The walls were lined with shelves full of old, dusty jars, strange symbols written on them. And there, in the center of the room, was a mirror. It stood alone, framed in dark wood. Its surface was cracked, but it still shimmered with a faint, unnatural glow. Logan froze. His reflection was wrong. He looked at it, and for a moment, it was like the reflection was staring back at him. The reflection grinned, a sinister, twisted smile that didn't belong to him. It was no longer his face. It was the face of someone else. Someone who had been here before. Before he could react, the whispers became voices. Loud, clear, demanding. You belong here. You cannot leave. Logan staggered back, his heart pounding. He wanted to scream, but the words lodged in his throat. He felt the cold hands of the house reach for him, tugging at his soul, pulling him closer to the mirror. Maya and Eli backed away, but it was too late. They were already trapped. The mirror seemed to pulse with a dark energy, like it was breathing. Logan's chest tightened. He tried to step back, but his feet felt rooted to the ground. It was as if the house itself was pulling him closer, making it harder to move. Maya grabbed his arm, her grip icy and desperate. Logan, we need to get out of here. We can't, this place, it's not just a house. It's something else. Eli, too, was backing away, but his eyes were wide with fear. I told you we shouldn't have come. I knew something was wrong from the start. The air was growing colder by the second, and the whispers, those same haunting, maddening whispers, began to grow louder. You belong to us now, they seemed to say. You cannot escape. Logan's head throbbed with pain, the voices cutting through him like knives. His legs felt weak, as if the strength was draining out of him, leaving him a hollow shell. Maya's voice broke through his fog of panic. Logan, focus. We have to do something, anything. This thing, it's feeding on our fear. Suddenly, the reflection in the mirror began to move. At first, it was subtle, just a flicker at the edge of Logan's vision. But then, the figure in the mirror began to step forward, slowly, deliberately, until it was almost touching the glass. It was the man. The same tall figure they had seen earlier, but now he was, alive in the reflection. Logan's heart raced as the figure's eyes locked with his. The same twisted, malicious grin spread across the figure's face. Logan's mouth went dry. The man's lips parted, and for a moment, Logan thought he heard his own voice. You shouldn't have come. Before Logan could react, the reflection stepped out of the mirror. The air around them cracked, a sharp, violent sound like glass breaking. The shadow of the figure loomed over them, taller, darker, its features distorted and shifting. Eli stumbled back, his face pale. What is that? I don't know. Maya screamed. We have to get out, now. But it was too late. The house seemed to pulse, the walls throbbing as though the foundation itself was alive. The room began to close in on them, the walls narrowing, the floor beneath their feet vibrating. Logan tried to move, but it was as if invisible hands were gripping him, holding him in place. The air grew thick with the stench of decay, and the darkness deepened, swallowing everything in its path. Then, the ground beneath their feet trembled violently, and the entire room shifted. The shelves full of jars crashed to the floor, the contents spilling out, strange, glowing liquids pooling in the cracks. The figure in front of them spoke again, his voice low and distorted. You've awakened what should never have been disturbed. And now you will join us, forever. The lights flickered out, plunging them into complete darkness. Logan could hear his own breathing, rapid and shallow, but it was drowned out by the growing rumble of the house, the sounds of it coming alive, the walls groaning as if in pain. And then there was silence. Suddenly, a bright flash of light erupted from the center of the room, blinding them. Logan shielded his eyes, but the light burned through his eyelids. He could feel the heat, the oppressive weight of it, and the unbearable pressure building all around him. Before he could react, everything went black. The darkness enveloped them, thick and suffocating, like a heavy blanket that wouldn't let them breathe. Logan's head pounded as though the very air was crushing him, each heartbeat louder than the last. He opened his eyes, but it was impossible to see anything beyond the black void. His body felt heavy, weighed down by something he couldn't understand. His heart raced in panic, but his limbs felt sluggish, unable to respond. He reached out, his hand brushing against something soft and cold. Maya's voice cut through the silence, a whisper that felt miles away. "Logan, can you hear me? Maya?" His voice barely rose above a whisper. "Where are you?" "I'm here," she answered, her tone shaking. I don't know where we are. I can't see you." He wanted to scream, to call out, but no sound came from his mouth. His body was frozen, trapped in this unrelenting void. Suddenly, there was a sharp crack, followed by a low growl, a sound that seemed to come from deep within the earth. Logan's pulse quickened. He knew what that sound meant. He had heard it before. It was the man, the one from the mirror. His laughter echoed in the darkness, cold and cruel. "You cannot escape. You are mine now," the voice boomed, sending a chill down Logan's spine. "This world, this place, it bends to my will. And you." Logan's hand shot out, but he couldn't feel the walls, the floor, nothing. It was as if the entire world had dissolved around them. Panic clawed at his chest. "Logan!" Maya's voice again, louder this time. She sounded like she was right next to him. He reached for her, but her touch seemed to slip just out of his grasp. Don't let it pull you in," she pleaded. "We have to make a choice. We can't keep fighting this. If we do, we'll end up like—" Her voice was abruptly cut off by a deafening crash, and the world shook violently. Logan stumbled, feeling the ground shift beneath him, like the earth was trying to swallow him whole. In an instant, the darkness split open. A blinding light flashed, and Logan felt himself falling, tumbling through the air. Then, as if from nowhere, a voice broke through. It was soft at first, but it grew louder with every second. The voice that had haunted him since the beginning, a voice that seemed to echo through the very fabric of the house. "Make your choice." The words hung in the air, heavy with a sense of finality. Logan's heart skipped a beat. What choice? What was he supposed to do? A figure appeared before him. It was the man, but now he was no longer confined to the mirror. He stood in front of Logan, his expression twisted with malice. "You will either join me, or you will be erased." The man raised his hand, and the air around Logan crackled with power. The shadows seemed to dance and twist, trying to reach for him, to pull him back into the void. Logan's mind raced. He could feel Maya's presence, faint but still there, somewhere in the dark. "Please," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't want this. I don't want any of this." The figure's lips curled into a smile. "It's too late for that. You've already chosen." Suddenly, the world shifted again. The ground beneath Logan's feet gave way, and he felt himself falling into an endless abyss. But just before he vanished into the dark, a new voice, one he hadn't heard before, spoke to him. "Fight." It was a single word, but it felt like a lifeline. Logan took a deep breath, drawing on every last ounce of strength he had left. His fists clenched, and he gritted his teeth, refusing to let himself be swallowed by the darkness. The ground beneath him rumbled as the figure loomed over him, its presence overwhelming. "You cannot escape," the man said one final time. But Logan refused to back down. "I won't give up," he muttered, more to himself than to the figure. "I'll fight for my life." Logan's pulse thudded in his ears, a steady drumbeat that seemed to echo through the vast emptiness. The world around him seemed to dissolve and shift like quicksand. The only thing he could focus on was the looming figure in front of him, the man. The dark presence that had been chasing him for so long, the very embodiment of everything that had gone wrong in his life. But this time, Logan felt something different. A spark. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The words the unknown voice had spoken to him rang in his mind, "Fight." The ground beneath his feet trembled again, sending ripples through the shadows that were closing in on him. He could feel the pull of the abyss, the dark force that wanted to swallow him whole, but he wasn't going to let it. Not now. "You can't win," the man sneered, his voice like cold steel. "It's over. You've already lost." Logan's eyes narrowed, his breath coming in quick bursts. The air around him crackled with an energy he couldn't explain, but he could feel it. Power. It was as if the universe itself was whispering to him, urging him to take that final step, to stand his ground and fight. "I won't lose," Logan growled, the words coming from deep within his chest. His voice was steady, his resolve hardening with every passing second. "Not to you." With a swift motion, Logan lunged at the figure, the shadows twisting around him as if trying to hold him back. The man's eyes widened in shock, but Logan didn't stop. He felt the warmth of Maya's presence in his mind, her voice urging him on, even though they were still separated by the endless darkness. "You don't have to do this alone," her words echoed in his mind, clear as day. "We're in this together. We can fight this." Logan closed his eyes for a moment, drawing strength from the connection they shared, the bond that had kept him going this far. He didn't know how, but he could feel her. He wasn't alone anymore. The man laughed, a hollow, sinister sound. But it was a laugh that began to waver, the confidence behind it slowly crumbling. "You think you can defeat me?" His voice was shaking now, less sure, less certain. Logan could feel it. The cracks were starting to form. The dark figure was not invincible after all. Without thinking, Logan raised his hands, summoning every ounce of energy that had been coursing through him since the very beginning. The shadows recoiled as a blinding light surged from his fingertips, pushing against the darkness like a beacon of hope. The man's face twisted in fury. "No!" he screamed, his body writhing as the light burned through him. The darkness began to collapse in on itself, the shadows scattering in all directions, unraveling like threads. Logan could feel the world around him shifting. The ground beneath his feet began to stabilize, and the darkness that had once threatened to consume everything began to recede. The man's figure flickered and flickered again, until he finally disappeared with a deafening roar, leaving nothing behind but a deep, echoing silence. For a moment, Logan stood alone, gasping for breath, his chest heaving with exhaustion. The air was thick with the remnants of the dark force, but the oppressive weight had lifted. The world was still. Peaceful, even. And then, like a soft whisper in the distance, Maya's voice called out to him. "Logan?" He spun around, and there she was. Standing in the clearing of light that had formed around him. She was no longer a distant voice in his mind. She was real, flesh and blood, and she was there. "Maya," Logan whispered, his heart soaring in his chest. With a smile, Maya stepped forward, her arms open, and without a second thought, Logan rushed to her. They embraced, the warmth of their connection filling the void that had surrounded them for so long. "We did it," Maya said softly, her voice filled with relief. Logan nodded, his own voice trembling. "We did it." They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, knowing that everything had changed. The darkness was gone, and the future was finally in their hands. The silence that followed their victory felt like a breath held for an eternity, and yet, for the first time, Logan felt truly at peace. As he stood there with Maya, surrounded by the remnants of the darkness that had once ruled their world, everything seemed possible again. The winds around them began to stir, a gentle breeze that carried with it the scent of earth, fresh and new. It was as though the very world was waking up, reborn after a long and painful slumber. The skies above were no longer heavy with storm clouds but stretched wide, bright and endless. Logan felt the weight of it all, a deep sense of relief, as though he had shed a skin that had clung to him for far too long. Maya stepped back, her eyes bright with hope. "We've done it, Logan. It's over." He nodded, his gaze lingering on her. Despite everything they'd been through, despite the struggles and the suffering, she was still here, standing beside him. They had both fought so hard, and now, finally, there was peace. But what now? Logan asked, his voice quieter, as if the enormity of the victory was only just beginning to settle in. "What do we do now that the darkness is gone?" Maya smiled softly, taking his hand in hers. "Now, we rebuild. We find our place in the world again." Logan felt a sense of purpose stirring in his chest. It was strange, how much he had longed for this moment of resolution, yet now that it was here, he wasn't sure what the next step was. He had spent so much time running, so much time trying to escape the past and the shadow that haunted him. But now, there was no more running. "Together," he said, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Together," Maya repeated, her voice steady, filled with conviction. As the two of them began walking away from the place where the final battle had taken place, Logan looked back one last time. The land behind them was shifting, transforming. The last remnants of darkness were dissolving into the air like mist, and the world was starting to heal, bit by bit. They walked in silence for a while, side by side, with only the sound of their footsteps filling the air. Logan's heart was lighter now. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't burdened by the weight of the past. He didn't know where the road ahead would lead, but he knew one thing for certain: it was theirs to walk together. And somewhere deep inside, Logan knew that this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning.